Irene Aldana couldn't get it done for the team against Amanda Nunes, but Alessandro Costa out of Lobo Gym looking for his first UFC win. He's going to try and rally the troops. Nono's got a big-time fight coming up against 2020's biggest flyweight story. Won the brick. Jimmy Flick in 2020 was the last time he won a fight when he took on Cody Durden. He had the Flying Triangle win, and his last time out after 2 years away from action, he took on Charles Johnson, and the pressure of Johnson ended up earning Johnson the TKO victory. So for Flick, the retirement, it was a surprise. The quotes after the retirement, they were a surprise. Flick, the former LFA flyweight champ, he gets the win on Contender Series by submission. He ends up in the UFC. But yeah, the retirement, short-lived. So Flick looking to get it done in this matchup where both guys good at jiu-jitsu. Both of them black belts. Both of them accredited on the ground. Both guys will strike, but in different ways, because for Alessandro Costa, he's going to throw every ounce of his being into his boxing combinations. He's not a big kicker, whereas Jimmy Flick is all about throwing kicks to all three levels on the outside, not necessarily known for his boxing. Flick, very, very good with his wrestling, but for Alessandro Costa, a wrestling base to get him into his jiu-jitsu, and Costa's going to go for some very powerful takedowns in his fight. So it'll be interesting to see what we get, because with Costa, where he wasn't as successful as Flick on Contender Series, you might go, Craig, but he won a fight, and he dropped his opponent in that fight. Yeah, he did, but he wasn't Joe Pyfer in week 1 of last year's Contender Series, so he had to prove himself. Costa goes back with Lux. He gets his flyweight belt back, and then he ends up into the UFC against the now third-ranked Amir Albazi. And it was like going to a small town, just a driving range for Amir Albazi, and he was hitting balls off a tee against Alessandro Costa. He looked really good with his own striking. It was on short notice for Costa, but it was way too much too soon, so a tough test there for Costa, whereas Flick, he did come back and lose to Johnson, who has lost 2 in a row after that, so it doesn't necessarily look all that good. But Matt, this is one of those get-right fights for both of these guys, and it should be a lot of fun where both have bases in jiu-jitsu.
It should be a lot of fun, but for Flick, it's going to come down to how does he deal with the pressure of Costa, because if Costa's allowed to throw in the pocket and there's no real consequences for it, I don't know how Flick, with his kicks, is going to be able to create some of that distance, because he's a fighter. Now, Ryan Hall isn't the perfect comparison, but I do think there are some similarities in the way that they will fight on the back foot, try to use their movement, use their opponent's forward pressure to bait them into big strikes, and again, use those kicks like you bring up. And Flick does have good leg kicks. He will throw them to the head as well. But if Costa's able to really assert his dominance and his positioning on the inside, I think he's going to be able to go to the body and the head with his boxing combinations. And I think that's going to be a difficult hill for Flick to climb, because Flick has such a unique game. I think he could win this fight by submission off his back, oddly enough. You don't say that often in MMA, but he is of that level with his grappling. He is that tricky off his back. He's that tricky in the top position as well. I just think that unless he's able to really go out there and dominantly use his offensive wrestling, what is his answer going to be on that in-between and up close? Because if he just goes for the clinch, well, Costa's still going to throw damaging strikes in the clinch. He still has good dirty boxing, and Costa can go for his own takedowns like you bring up. So unless Flick's going to be able to go out there and really put on his wrestling shoes a la Corey Anderson before he get exciting all of a sudden, I do think Flick's going to really struggle with some of the ranges in this fight.
And it'll be interesting out of both these guys, because for Costa, I said he's not a big kicker. He's not a big leg kicker. But if you watch his fight against Kike Gonzalez for the belt over with Lux, when Costa's able to get the win, what sets up the finishing sequence? It's a kick to the body that sends his opponent running. He ends up getting the fight down to the ground. He finishes it. So a big win for Costa there. He drops Martinetti over on Contender Series with a short right hand in close, drops him like a sack of potatoes. And then Costa's last win when he's taking on old 6-4. We're talking about Carlos Gomez in that one. What was it? Leg kick, left hand, and then straight right hand, and sleeps his opponent Cargo in that one. So good wins for Costa on the way up, but not against a great level competition. Flick definitely fought a better level of competition on his rise. Obviously, Flick is the older fighter in the matchup. He's the bigger fighter, the longer fighter, and he's not the favored fighter in this one. We have a look at the fan vote. Costa finished his last time out, and so was Flick. So the get-right fight is in effect. A lot of those on this card, so usually produces fireworks. Matt, I think the fans are going to go with Costa. I'm going to say over under 72.5% Costa.
I think it's over.
I think it's over. It is over. 619 total votes, 77% Costa, 80% by knockout. For the 23% that have Flick, 62% by submission. Matt, these two guys, I mean, it's what? 16 wins for Flick, 12 wins for Costa, a combined 20 submission wins out of the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts, and most people think Costa's going to win by knockout. I have Alessandro Costa in this fight, and there was one thing that I heard the corner of Charles Johnson yell over and over and over again in the first round of the fight against Flick, and it was, put him on his heels! Put him on his heels! And it worked for Charles Johnson.
You can't kick moving backwards. Pretty hard.
Johnson throws a lot of everything. He throws a lot of volume, and it might not hit, kind of like a Ricky Tercios, whereas Costa likes to rip to the body to come back up to the head. I like that for Costa in this fight, and that's why I'm picking him. You can never count out Flick. We saw it, Contender Series, LFA, and all of the organizations that he fought with on the way up. The triangle chokes, the guillotines. Flick is one of those guys you have to watch out for with the jiu-jitsu. I think Costa has decent enough wrestling and pretty darn good jiu-jitsu. And I love the fact that Diego Lopez didn't get to use that jiu-jitsu when he was cornering Aldana in last weekend's main event. But boy, that's solid. It's going to be in the corner this weekend, and I love it for Costa.
I like Costa in the matchup too. I think on the inside he can do a lot of work with his boxing. Like you said, the body shots are going to be there against a guy like Flick. If Flick is able to use his movement to keep his back off the cage, he can throw a lot of kicks out there, making it a really uncomfortable fight for Costa. But I favor Costa in a lot of the exchanges on the feet. On the mat, Flick can make it interesting with just about anybody, but I think Costa can hold his own too in some of the grappling exchanges. So for those reasons, I have Costa in this one.
Both of us going with Brazil's no, babe. No. Don't lie. Alessandro Costa to get the win. I don't know if he's a Fergie fan, but we'll see if he can be Fergalicious this weekend. Some big-time fights coming up in this card, including Vettori versus Cannonier in the main event. You're not going to want to miss it. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.